Good evening, Jazmin L'Amy here. Thanks again for tuning in to I'm Your Biggest Fan. I hope you've all had a lovely weekend since the last time you heard my voice. I've got another exciting interview for you a little bit later on with Beyond Extinction's vocalist Jasper Harmer, where we'll be talking about his favourite band, which are another Australian band, funnily enough. Seems to be a theme going on here from last week. Maybe next week might be AC/DC. Who knows? Well, I know, but that's besides the point. I'll have you know I'm very good at keeping secrets. For those of you who are here because the station is titled Indie Rocks, I'd like to apologise in advance for the upcoming hour that will consist of nothing but pure heaviness. Mega talented heaviness though, so maybe you'll discover something new and insightful about metal as a virtuosic genre that will show you the other side of the coin. I used to be like that when I was younger as well, would only exclusively listen to Iron Maiden, and anything that was heavier than that was just pointless. Like, why do they need to shout? Well, the shouting is actually the audible representation of the aggressive lyrics. It goes hand in hand, and the talent that actually goes in behind being able to make those noises with your voice, without hurting yourself and making it sound effortless, is an art form in itself that certainly deserves recognition, even if it isn't your usual cup of tea. The first band I'm going to play you today is one that I'm hoping is at the softer end of the new wave of American metal spectrum, if there is such a thing, and are known for being one of the pioneers of that subgenre. This is a track about the sadly all too common mass shootings in America, especially in schools, so you can imagine the passion being injected into this anger. Give it a whirl. Here's Lamb of God with Reality Bar. So, I hope that wasn't too much of an assault on your ears. Or maybe I do. As I mentioned earlier, I caught up with the vocalist of Essex-based band Beyond Extinction, Jasper Harmer. The death metal band consists of 5 extremely talented guys who are all only in their late teens, and after only just releasing their debut EP a few weeks ago, The Fatal Flaws of Humankind, are already showing so much more potential than a lot of the bands in the scene who have been doing this for a lot longer. Today, Jasper's here to talk about his favourite band, Australian metalcore titans Parkway Drive.
Streaming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, around the world. This is Indie Rocks Radio.
Tell me about the first time you ever heard Parkway Drive, because you would have been, like 3 or 4 when their debut EP was released?
Yeah, so I wasn't listening to them that early, unfortunately. If that makes me a poser, then I apologise for that. But I reckon the first time I ever heard one of their songs, I was probably about 14, and they didn't ever strike me as kind of like a particularly special band the first time I heard them. And I remember distinctly, though, the first time I put proper effort into listening to them was just before they'd announced that they were going to release Aya, which is their 5th album. Mm-hmm. Listened to a few of their like kind of first original albums, like Horizons, Killing with a Smile, that sort of thing. And I just kind of thought they were like, oh, this is a pretty cool band because it sits in the mix between hardcore, like thrash and metalcore, which is like appeals to a large kind of listenership. So I reckon I was probably about 14, and I listened to a few of their songs. I mixed in playlists with other things, and never kind of put loads of effort into just identifying them. And then I saw them play live in 2016, and I was like, this is nuts. This band, like, they're absolutely crazy. And from that point on, I was just hooked. So it was kind of an accidental thing, really. I didn't ever mean to get into them as much as I did. Mm. But just by kind of listening to them enough, dispersed into my other music genres and stuff, I ended up kind of finding accidentally that I was listening to them basically every single day.
Yeah, so they were more of like a slow burner for you then?
Yeah, 100%. They were like, they never stood out originally as a band, which I thought I'd love. But then I just remember one time I was sat in the car park of a gym, and I put on. It was just after Ira had come out, and I put on a song called "Writings on the Wall," and I remember just listening to it and being like, this is like, it just offered a different aspect to any of the metalcore I was listening to at that time. Yeah. And something that just clicked for me then. And I think I'd already seen them live once at that point. So I was like, yeah, I need to just, invest some more time into actually appreciating this music. And then it was when I think, kind of clocked on to just how different they were to what else I was listening to then. That's when I realised that I was like, this is, something else. This is actually like really, really cool.
Another crooked line that you cross off the tally of your dreams. Don't step out of line, kid, you learn it pretty fast. Every face has its place in the crowd. They'll give you all the answers so you don't ask any questions, and they march with a smile into the ground. And we all go to heaven in a little robot. So put your hands up, put your hands up. If crawling for the scraps won't ever be enough, put your hands up, put your hands up. The writing's on the wall, this ain't ever gonna stop. Put your hands up, put your hands up. If crawling for the scraps won't ever be enough, put your hands up, put your hands up. We'll fight until we die, this ain't ever gonna stop. This straight out world, this sick sad place, got a belly full of maggots and disease. Every apple here is rotten, every blessing is a curse, every word is a lie, you best believe. We take one step forward, then 2 steps back, in a race to the bottom of the barrel. They teach us how to fear, they teach us how to hate, then they arm us and they march us all to hell. And it's left, 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 right, left. So put your hands up, put your hands up. If crawling pain for our souls, and still we said nothing. Now they're coming for our lives. Tell what's it gonna take? So what's it gonna take? What's it gonna take? What's it gonna take? See how they run, see how they run. Now put your hands up, put your hands up. If crying for the scraps won't never be enough, put your hands up, put your hands up. The writing's on the wall, this ain't ever gonna stop. Yeah, put your hands up, put your hands up. If crying for the scraps won't ever be enough, put your hands up, put your hands up. We'll fight until we die, this ain't ever gonna stop.
And that was the track Writings on the Wall from the album Ira. What song was it that kind of made that click in your head?
So it's hard to say, because I think that the first ones I listened to obviously kind of put me in as a list, and that's like dotted around different albums. I'd say the Writings on the Wall was the first one I listened to that genuinely made me go, yeah, this is like different levels to what I'm listening to right now. But then I'd say the first one I ever listened to, which I genuinely was just like, this is an awesome, regardless of who wrote it, regardless of the kind of contextual things of what else I was listening to at the time, was probably Karma, which is off their album Deep Blue, just purely because it's just like the most relentlessly heavy song I'd heard at the time. I was like, this is like a whole new aspect of music.
Yeah, of course. So would you say that's your favourite song and favourite album? Because of the tracks that you have sent me, you definitely seem to favour the much heavier ones over the more melodic ones that they've got.
Yeah, I'm kind of... It's hard, because basically Parkway Drive listeners usually fit into two camps. You get the camp of, I wish they made music like they did in 2006 again, and the camp of, I like their new melodic stuff now. And I find myself sitting between the two, and depending on my mood, I really listen to either part of it. Like, some days I only want to listen to their most recent two albums, because they're just much more easy to listen to. They're much more melodic, much more kind of like rhythmically set out, and have better structure. But then more often than not, I find that if I really just want to listen to some gnarly kind of relentless riffage, their old albums are better. But I'd say that my favourite Parkway album will be Horizons, which is their second studio album, and that came out before I was probably comprehending what music even was, to be honest with you. But it was, yeah, that album as a whole was probably the one that I go back to most, because it's just got all the features that Parkway Drive do best, and there's not a single filler song on that whole album. It's one of those few albums by which you can listen to the entire thing, and not a single song is one which you'd skip halfway through, or the one which you wouldn't be excited to listen to. Every one that comes on, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot this song was on here, and I can't wait to listen to this.
So, here is Boneyards for the 2007 album Horizons.
See your face in hell, as we cannot
Hi, my name's Gordon. You can listen to my show That Sound every Sunday from 11am to 12pm and on repeat in the early hours of Monday morning from 1am to 2am. I'll be playing some of my favourite songs from an eclectic mix of indie, rock, punk, soul and just some all-round great tunes. So make sure you tune into my show That Sound with Gordon Taggart at Indie Rocks Radio.
Mentioned before about seeing them live, and I watched a live video today of them performing The Void at Wacken Open Air, and at the beginning their vocalist Winston goes, "I'm going to count to 3 and I want you all to jump," and obviously you can imagine the sea of people jumping up and down, and I don't know what came over me, but I just started crying. Like, some people who aren't into this music will never understand like the cathartic power of being at a metal show like that, and I think just like the whole past year just kind of all crumbled onto me earlier today, and I was like, oh, I miss that feeling.
I totally get you. I think like I've seen them I think 6 times now, and it's so weird. They're the only band that I can like. I listen to them not because I want to listen to music, but I listen to them because I just want to get the feeling that I get when I do. And I totally get what you mean. It's kind of like it's this weird just moment where like whatever I can be doing and however my day has gone, it doesn't matter. Like listening to their music and watching live videos and stuff and seeing them live, it just pulls you out of whatever situation you're in, and my entire attention just goes into that. And like I find myself basically on like a daily basis just looking through all the videos I filmed from seeing them at concerts and stuff, and just being, man, I as much as I love seeing them, I still, every time I watch these videos I've recorded, I just didn't appreciate enough seeing them then. I think obviously it's hard because I've seen them basically every single year for the last kind of like 6 years, and with the pandemic stuff, 2020 was the only year I haven't seen them. So having this kind of gap in like where I regularly would be seeing them, it's almost like I feel like I'm owed a Parkway Drive experience that I didn't get. And watching these live videos, like you say, I'm just like, man, I just miss this like beyond words. Like just this band in particular had like this effect on me that it's just totally euphoric, and you know, you can't replicate that in any other way. It's a crazy experience hearing them, and something which anyone who likes this sort of music needs to do, because they're absolutely insane live.
Yeah, I feel like that about so many freaking albums. Like artists. Like Iron Maiden's one of the biggest ones for me, and it's weird because it's not like Iron Maiden's music is personal or anything, like with the lyrics, but I think just because I associate Iron Maiden with my dad, every time like I hear a Maiden song, it's that kind of association rather than
definitely.
But yeah, did you manage to catch the Viva the Underdogs documentary released last January?
So I'm going to seem like such a fake fan here after we got about how much I love them, and I actually still haven't seen it yet. On the basis that I haven't been able to get a hold of it in any way that doesn't involve illegally streaming it, and it's the only thing that I will refuse to illegally watch in my life. Like, you know, I spent ages watching The Office and all these other things just on like that would be on Netflix that I couldn't see at the time and find them illegally and stream them illegally, but I can't bring myself to do it to this band that I love. Like, I have it the proper way.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen it when it was going around in cinemas, but I'd moved to Southampton when they were kind of touring different cinemas with it, and they weren't playing it there. So I'm still yet to see that. And I've seen the kind of clips from it. I've seen like various kind of like adverts from it and stuff like that. I've just yet to ever sit down and find the time to find a place to get a hold of it and buy and watch it. I think it's just one of those things that slipped my mind because they've got 2 prior documentaries on YouTube already, and those ones are kind of like nearly 2 hours long each, and they're all like the kind of era of when they were producing the music when my favourite albums were coming out. So those ones, whenever I kind of go to look for this new Viva the Underdogs documentary, I find myself like, you know, going into YouTube like Parkway Drive documentary like preview, and then these old ones will come up and I'll be like, oh, I'll just put this on like while I'm looking, and then find myself sat there for 2 hours watching that instead.
Yeah, I've been seeing like a lot of imagery of Winston, their vocalist, throwing a Molotov cocktail around on stage, and that's it. I think that's in the preview for the new documentary as well, and it's been really exciting. My inner pyromaniac, like I miss the feeling of that heat so much.
Definitely, when the first time I saw them doing this stage show for the last album, Reference, live, I knew that there was loads of like pyro elements to it, but I didn't particularly know what. And I saw them at Ali Pali, and I was probably like 3 rows from the front, and they come out to do the encore, and just the heat of it, like you say, is literally like, it's like you feel like your eyebrows are getting singed off. It's this ridiculous experience that in any other context you'd just be so uncomfortable and hating it, because it's just like genuinely nasty to be around something that hot and offensive and abrasive to your senses. But just at that time, you're just like, oh, you just set fire to my face, I don't care, this is like the coolest moment ever.
Yeah, it's the same with mosh pitting as well. Like if you're in that environment, that's the only time you're happy to be battered and beaten by total strangers.
Exactly, yeah. It's all about context, isn't it? It's like once you're in that mindset, then that's what you want to be doing. And it might seem stupid outside of it. Like no one's going to think it's normal to, you know, be walking around the street and start like spin kicking random people in the face. But when you put the right soundtrack to it, it's suddenly acceptable. And that probably seems weird to people that don't like, you know, this sort of music. But to me, I think that's totally fair enough, to be honest with you.
Extra grind, a crooked mind.
That was Prey off of the latest record, Reverence.
Follow our social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Indie Rocks UK, or our website, www.indierocks.co.uk.
They're a band that have seemed to have done ridiculously well from the get-go, with their debut EP selling so well in 2004, and then going on to record their first LP with Killswitch's Engage's guitarist in 2005. Why do you think they managed to pick up traction so fast?
I think there's probably a combination of like two things. I think the first one being that they come from a country at a time when the culture around this sort of music was that you basically go crazy or you go home, and they were the craziest people in a band anyway. I mean, the vocalist Winston was like a world-class level bodyboarder, and they were all like surfer guys who used to just like skip off whatever jobs they were doing to go and surf and basically just kind of do everything the whole rock and roll lifestyle intended people to do. And that fits so well with the kind of mood and aesthetic around kind of heavier music in Australia at the time. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why they caught traction so early there, purely on the basis that they just embodied everything anyone wanted to see in alternative heavy music. They just wanted that crazy kind of go get it, no punches barred attitudes just to anything they did. And when you pair that with the fact that they created a perfect bridge between hardcore music and metal music, and in my opinion they're one of the most like pioneering metalcore bands, because that they just seemed to create every good element that you would get out of thrash and death metal and then hardcore music and punk music, stick it all together and somehow managed to create this new sound which fit every single one of those listenerships really well. And you listen to like, you know, the first sort of 3 releases they put out, and even the switch with the split CD with I Killed the Prom Queen is like, even though it's early music and even though they've clearly just got their influences and kind of jammed them together, it works so well and appeals to such a variety of moods and people that there's always going to be a listenership for that. And I feel like if you combine those two things, or the attitude and the music, you're just going to get such an amazing experience. People that want to have any involvement in either of that, and anyone who probably came across them that was remotely involved in either of those two things, the music or the scene, just definitely wanted to be a part of it, and I can't blame them at all.
Yeah, it's really weird because obviously I only started listening to them for this interview, and before I had only ever heard of their band name, and they seem like a really humble bunch of guys, and I was surprised at their sound when I first heard them, because my initial preconception was that they weren't nearly as heavy. Like, for some reason I thought they were going to be more like a Limp Bizkit type band, but their sound, although it has an overall metalcore feel to it, like you were saying, it still incorporates really obvious sections of classic heavy metal and alternative metal, which isn't as prominent in a lot of modern metalcore bands that seem to favour a breakdown every 30 seconds.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things where it's kind of it's a gamble to do that, because if you want to appeal to a wider audience like they do, you've got to get aspects that everyone wants to hear. You know, you got to chuck aspects in for the old school kind of thrash fans, and you got to chuck the new bits in, like you say, for the sort of breakdown fanatics and that lot. And you got to get a mix right, because if you risk doing that and not conforming to one genre, you stand in the kind of area where you could not actually appeal to either of the fan bases, and it's difficult to kind of like define it in a way. I think because they've done that genre mixing so well, in that you can listen to one song and be thinking, yeah, this would fit just as well at kind of like a hardcore festival as it would like opening for Slayer or something. You know, it's kind of like you get all these different areas from it, and I think that's probably why you get different expectations when you listen to them, because a band that headlines Bloodstock, for example, as they did in 2019, you wouldn't expect to be classic metalcore, but they fit a lot of the bill for the classic metalcore kind of bands and fans. And then a band that can sort of tour with people like Bring Me Horizon and Architects, you think the classic metal fans definitely wouldn't expect them to sound anything like they do if they're playing with those bands, but lo and behold, they can still play Bloodstock and still draw tens of thousands of people to come and listen to them. It's quite outstanding the way they've done it, and very difficult to replicate, which I think is probably why they appeal to me and so many people the way they do, because it sounds cliche, but there really is no one else like them doing what they do.
And here's Destroyer from the album Ira, with a really cool blend of heavy and melodic elements. Yeah, I definitely get that when I listen to them. And they were also, in some of the other interviews I was reading and watching, they were talking about their latest two albums, Ira and Reverence. Obviously, they're a lot more melodic than their initial first few albums. And I read that during the making and tour of Ira, a lot of personal darknesses and tragedies and harrowing deaths were occurring within and around the band. Feelings that obviously got channeled further into their music. And it had me in total pieces again when I was reading about it. It was so messed up. But do you think that all death metal and metalcore bands and artists in general have to have circumstances and issues like that in their lives to be able to create such emotionally intense music?
I feel like it's really hard to kind of pinpoint at like what exact stages in people's like kind of creation of music can kind of form and craft like exact sounds. And I think that often loads of really good bands and really good records are created, as you say, with like horrible kind of tragic events and cathartic moments in mind, and that can be really useful. But I think also it's kind of important to remember that so many bands create music, and personally for me as well, when it comes to the music and lyrics that I'm writing with my band, is that you want to do it so that people can listen and imprint their own meaning on it. I feel like as much as it's super helpful and often results in really good outcomes, as you can see with people, the last few Parkway albums, to write with these nastier and almost difficult kind of events in mind, you can really write about anything. And if it can resonate with someone in their own personal way, that's what's important to me, because nobody's going to be able to know exactly, what the vocalist was feeling when he wrote the certain lyrics, or what the guitarists were feeling when they wrote certain sections of songs and things like that. But what they can do is try and relate in their own ways. And I feel like while it's definitely useful to have these kind of more difficult and darker things to write music from, because they often kind of instigate the most emotion and the most emotive response, you also can get that same response from people in their own personal ways from writing about anything, really. That said, though, Parkway Drive clearly take these negative experiences and put it in a kind of format which is relatable, accessible, and understood by so many people that it becomes as popular as it is.
Yeah. What's your favourite Parkway lyric?
That's a really hard one.
I know.
Because the thing is, there's so many kind of iconic ones in the sense of like breakdown wise and heaviness wise. I'd say my favourite one in terms of kind of heaviness and just like proper meaty metal is there's a song called the Siren Song, which is the second track, but basically the opening track of the album Horizons. And there's this like kind of like 4-beat silence, and this breakdown comes in, and the lyrics are just dead by first light, they can't wipe the blood from her eyes. And I remember the first time I heard that, I was like 15. I've never heard just such like graphic images in the lyrics, and I was like, that is just so brutal. Just kind of like this idea of like this body laying out, kind of just mutilated or whatever, and these people doing their best to kind of identify who it was, and it's just like, total carnage. But then also they've got really kind of emotive lyrics and more kind of thoughtful ones in their recent, albums and stuff. And I think that the entirety of the song "The Colour of Leaving" in the album Reverence is just almost a story in and itself. And the lyrics obviously are really important, but what strikes me in that song more is the raw emotion in Winston's voice, in that this guy is really, speaking and singing about things which have so much emotive meaning to him. And I think that whole song as a story just resonates with me entirely. So I think if I was going to pick favourite lyrics, I'd have to just say, The Colour of Leaving as a whole, as a song, lyrically is just perfect from the get-go to the final syllable.
Yeah, that's the one that I read about. When he was recording the vocals for that, I think it said that he had to record it. He would only record it 4 times because each time he just kept breaking down and just crying.
You can hear it in his voice, and you can hear the kind of emotion with it, and you think like, this guy knows that this is going to be heard by millions of people around the world. To let yourself just release your emotion like that, it's got to be a really strong feeling to allow yourself to do that.
What you've got till it's slipping through your fingers. Never know just what you've got till it's gone with the wind. And you never miss your shadow till there's no one left beside you. You never miss your shadow till you're alone. alone in the dark. You never know just what will break you till you're picking up the pieces. Never know just what will break you till your world it falls apart. Never know how small your voice is till you're screaming at the silence. Never know how small your voice is till you're arguing with God. I saw Dad's face today as he led my friend away. I saw Dad's face today as he cast his shadow over me. I saw Dad's face today as he led my friend away. So I'll ask who I gotta pay to bring him back to me. Bring him back to me. You never know the words you should have said until they're all you're left with. Until the dirt is falling and the guilt it burns your bones. And we ask the biggest question, why the fuck did this all happen? Who on earth deserves this and what the hell do we do now? So we live like we have lost. And we love like we are broken. And as the color leaves the sky, we're left in reverence of the frailty of it all.
Hi, Richard here. If you like your rock with a bit more edge, tune into my show, Tilt. I'll be bringing you the best in new emerging artists from across the globe with the occasional throwback to classic rock tracks of yesteryear. Tilt, music from an alternative angle, every Tuesday at 6 p.m. on Indie Rocks Radio.
And that was, of course, The Colour of Leaving from the album Reverence. Yeah, I think that's what fans obviously resonate with as well. Like, these people that you've never met, that you only see on TV, and you hold them up on this pedestal, to know that they are also human too is obviously such a big thing as a fan of this type of music.
Definitely. There's everyone's got to relate to what they're listening to and put their own meaning onto it. And, you know, realistically, as much as someone could be stood in front of tens of thousands of people making their music and be a tiny little figure on a stage or just a voice on a kind of like Spotify playlist, that person is a human being who has written these lyrics and has, you know, sat up trying to write them like anyone else. You know, from a kid who sat trying to write his first like solo project in his room, writing lyrics there, to whether it's Winston, you know, writing lyrics for a next album which will be heard by tens of millions of people. They're still doing the same thing, which is getting personal human experiences and trying to write them into a projected way of kind of expressing themselves, which I think is, you know, it shows how everything is just at the basics of it exactly the same, regardless of whether you're a, you know, successful, internationally renowned musician or just someone who likes the music yourself.
Yeah, of course. How does Parkway Drive influence your vocal style and the lyrics in Beyond Extinction?
I think that it's really tough, because one of my kind of philosophies as a vocalist is the worst thing you can ever do is find someone that you like and try and sound like them, because everyone's voice is so individual, and I tend to find that the music where someone's clearly tried to sound like somebody else usually isn't as good, because they're not letting themselves fully put themselves into it. You know, because if you're spending your whole time trying to sound like somebody, you're not actually exploring how you can genuinely do yourself. So I'd say that when it comes to like vocal sound, technique, style, that sort of thing. Any similarities that I end up having with the band are purely kind of coincidental, realistically, is that, you know, they obviously make great music, Parkway Drive, so if we're going to do something to try and make great music and it ends up being the same, that's going to, you know, eventually happen, because to make good music, you're going to have to do good things consistently, and whether that's one band, two bands, or 100 bands, they're all going to do some similar things to appeal to more people. That said, lyrically, I think that it's really important to take influence from other musicians, and I feel like Parkway Drive are really good lyrically for finding very simple vocabulary and very, you know, easy to understand and accessible vocabulary to then utilise in lyric writing. I like to listen to like really extreme metal quite a lot of the time when it comes to lyricism, because you get some really cool kind of metaphors and stuff like Lorna Shore or Thy Is Murder are great examples. They have some really strong, you know, imagery in their lyrics, but the vocalization and the actual words themselves are often way more difficult to understand and to project. Whereas Parkway Drive are really good in that they utilise very simple wording and very kind of basic structure, in my opinion, to put across a really good kind of vocal technique and almost a vocal point, if you will. So I think that lyrically and the structure of the lyrics they write, I definitely take a lot more influence from that than I would do vocal style in particular.
When did you start kind of practicing your vocal style?
I reckon I must have been probably about 14 years old, something like that, and it literally would have just been me plugging a microphone that I borrowed from our drummer into an acoustic guitar, like an acoustic electric guitar amp, and basically listening to like old school Asking Alexandria and just shouting until my voice gave out, which is, for anyone that wants to get into vocals, the worst way to learn to do it. Please don't do that. And it's probably took me about 2 years, 3 years maybe to get into doing it properly. And I remember just kind of one day being like, look, I can keep doing this like this and eventually blow my voice out, or I can actually put effort in to try and make it sound and do it in a mature way. And when you realise that it's a learning curve and you can't just go in and immediately throw yourself into it, you realise very quickly that there's more important things like, you know, warming up, like taking care of your voice. And I'd say that it wasn't really until kind of like 2018/2019 that I fully became involved in properly, you know, sorting out vocal warm-ups and exercises and vocal care to do my vocalization properly. Up to that point, it was literally just in the classic, I like Asking Alexandria, I like Black Veil Brides, I'm just going to sort of try and sound like that through a really, you know, crappy mic in my bedroom and hope that I don't, you know, make myself mute within 5 years.
We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely not an individual thing for me. I think anyone who was either aged 13 to 15 or liked that kind of music has at one point tried to do that. And to be honest with you, I think it's almost like a maturing, like learning experience for everybody.
Well, it's clearly paid off for you as well, because hasn't is it God Complex that's just hit 10,000 streams on Spotify?
So we've had a bit of rapid growth recently. So we've nailed, I think, about 17 or 18,000 of God Complex now, and the whole EP is nearly at 25,000 streams. So that's really taken off recently, and we're super grateful for the people that have kind of jumped on that wagon since we released the EP and kind of, you know, became new fans and supporters of the band. It's been awesome to see like a much wider fan base of people and new people coming in and listening to our music. So it's great to see it, you know, it growing like that. This time a year ago, I don't think we'd had over 1,000 streams on any of our songs. So, you know, we've stepped up massively recently, and the payoff's been huge, and we're just really grateful for anyone who's listening and showing support. God Complex is the opening track of our debut EP, The Fatal Flaws of Humankind. This song was one that we spent a lot of time writing. We sat in warm summer houses in the middle of summer last year, sticking it together. It's groovy, it's riffy, it's heavy, and it puts kind of all the anger and energy that we could do as a band into a song. So hope you enjoy it and give it a nice little headbang.
My favourite part is when it goes quiet and then you shout no forgiveness and then the breakdown comes in.
We wrote that in the idea of thinking that's a really simple vocal line, so when we play it live people can shout it back to us and I can have like a 2-second break and catch my breath again.
That one's my favourite one. Anyway, thank you so much for this chat. I've really fucking enjoyed getting into Parkway Drive. I had no idea that I was going to like them this much. I've been listening to them whilst I've been doing my workouts.
That's awesome. No, I'm more than happy to spread the good word of Parkway Drive to anybody that is up for listening to them. I'm yet to find someone who's listened to them and gone, this isn't as good as so-and-so else. I don't think that there's anyone that could, in their right mind, listen to their music and decide never to listen to it again. So, thanks for giving it the opportunity, and thanks for reaching out about this, because I've had a really good time. I think any opportunity to talk about my music and my favourite band's music is something which I'm definitely going to take a hold of. So, yeah, really enjoyed it.
Discover something new with Indie Rocks Radio, Manchester's rising station.
Thanks so much again for tuning in to I'm Your Biggest Fan with me, Jazmin L'Amy. I hope you enjoyed the past hour's musical insights, and you can follow Jasper's band Beyond Extinction on Facebook at Beyond Extinction Band, Instagram at Beyond Extinction, and Twitter at BeyondXUK. You can also follow me and my journalism adventures on Facebook at Freak Magazine, Instagram at FreakJazz666, Twitter at FreakMag666, and, dare I say it, TikTok at MetalliJazz. Don't get too excited on that one though, I still don't know how to use it properly and it just angers me. But if you enjoy heavy metal, band shirts, and bad lip syncing, then go ahead and follow me. Thanks again, see you next week.